Hi, welcome to this video, which is of the problem of evil, ooh, spooky, for the AQA Religious Studies A-level spec. So let's just get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering. All the good stuff might take a while. Oh yeah, disclaimer, I'm a student, not a teacher. Don't take everything I say as the truth. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So first off, moral versus natural evil. If you don't know this, then I think you should probably click off and accept that it's over for you. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. So, moral evil is the evil that results from the free choices of human beings. For example, murder, I don't know, Ted Bundy, people doing war crimes, you know. Natural evil is evil that comes from the processes of the natural world. So, like Hurricane Katrina, or like the Boxing Day tsunami, you know, that kind of stuff. So, that leads to the logical problem, which is how can God exist if suffering exists too? It's like the whole if God is real, then why did my dog die? You know, that kind of stuff. So, well, let's talk about it. I guarantee you've seen this before. The Inconsistent Triad by Mackey. So, he says that any two of these can be true, but not all three. So, you know, it's the whole, well, if God was all powerful, then why wouldn't he stop evil? Unless he can't. And, you know, why would he allow evil if he was all loving, unless he is not? You know, it's basically just that they can't all coexist. And then this leads on to the evidential problem, which is different to the logical problem, because it focuses on, it's a posteriori, right? It focuses on what we can see, the evidence in our lives. We see a whole lot of suffering. Okay, if you go on BBC News, it's never anything good, it's just miserable, right? So the sheer extent and scale of suffering just means that the existence of God is improbable because there's just so much pain, you know? Now, of course, not everyone agrees with this stuff. For example, Augustine, he had the most famous response to the problem of evil, and that is the fall. So, he obviously talked about how the world was perfect, free of sin, until Adam and Eve were corrupted. They ate the forbidden fruit, they allowed sin and evil into the world, and that was like totally on us. Do you know what I mean? And he actually says that evil is the privation of good. So, what he means by that is the evil isn't a thing, it's just the absence of good. So it's not its own thing, it's like if you have a hole in your sock, then the hole isn't actually a thing, it's just the absence of fabric, you know? And so this leads us on to our first theodicy, soul making. Ooh, and that was made by John Hick, and he was inspired by Irenaeus, one of the early church fathers. Now, Irenaeus's point of view was that evil exists because we might move from human animals to children of God. This is like supported with Genesis. You know, humans were made in God's image, so maybe we have to, you know, move towards that ourselves by learning and growing. So soul makings basically says that if we didn't have evil, then we would never become better people. We would never develop virtues like courage, compassion, or empathy. We would never know what it's like to suffer, so how could we become better? And he also says that God keeps an epistemic distance, so he purposefully doesn't reveal himself to us, because if we knew that he existed, then we wouldn't be doing things to better ourselves, we'd only be doing them to please him. So it wouldn't truly be free will. And it explains that moral evil is just a consequence of living in a free world. and that this moral evil actually allows humans to grow and change through the process of soul making. You know, eventually, like, you'll be worthy of heaven because you've experienced all the bad stuff there is to have, and you've become a good person. He also said that natural evil might be explained by the world can't be a hedonistic paradise. There has to be some things that are just a little bit wacky in order to allow us to properly change and become the best version of ourselves. So, strengths of this is that it's logically possible, so it goes against the logical problem because it shows that God can exist despite evil. It's also appealing in the sense that it focuses on personal moral development, and it's also modern, so Hicks' views are more compatible with modern belief. You know, not a lot of people maybe attribute sin to the fall, so it kind of provides an alternate viewpoint. Weaknesses, though, is the rejection of the fall, because that is central to Christian theology. Also, it's like generally considered profoundly immoral to hurt someone in order to help them. It's like, is that really loving, you know? And then the scale and extent, this links back to it because imagine if you're like a baby or something and you live in famine and war and you only live to like 1 year old and then you die from polio or something. Like, you didn't get the chance to grow, so it's like, how true can the soul making theodicy really be? Okay, the next one is the free will defense, which has some overlaps from that you'll see. And that's basically that free will is the ultimate value. So the good that results from free will outweighs the acts of evil. So basically, it's worth it to have suffering if it means that we can have our own choices to do whatever we want. And actually, this defense says that for free will to be really genuine, it has to have three things. Permission, so the person can't have any restrictions. And I don't mean like the law, I mean like a physical restriction, like God strikes you down if you try and steal something. Ability, so you must be able to choose to do good or evil or both or whatever. And opportunity to sin, so the world must contain potential for acts of evil to either choose them or don't. And if we didn't have any one of these elements, then we wouldn't really be free. Free will would just be an illusion, and we would actually be puppets, we'd be controlled, you know, the whole shebang. And so Alvin Plantinga is in support of the free will defense. Now, he talks about transworld depravity. So his theory is that even an omnipotent God could not create a world where free will and no evil coexist. Because it's like impossible, right? You know, we could never truly be free if there was no evil, and so it's just a small price to pay, really. It's like impossible in the sense that you can't have a triangle with 5 sides. Now, Swinburne also supports a free will defense, and he obviously says that moral evil is just humans misusing their free will. It's like Kanye West, dude, all he does is misuse his free will, right? And Swinburne also says, in terms of natural evil, that if we didn't live in a predictable world with natural processes, we would be living in a toy world. So it wouldn't really be real, you know? Now, the strengths of this is that it demonstrates it's possible for God to exist. The focus on freedom is appealing to both believers and non-believers, and it very comfortably explains moral evil. Problem is that, well, it doesn't explain natural evil, and Mackey, back at it again, he says that it's technically, like, conceivably possible for a human to only make good choices and still have a good quality of life, right? I mean, if you never do anything wrong, I mean, you'd be, like, really boring, but, like, you know, it's possible. So why didn't God make us this way? Either he couldn't because he's not powerful enough, or he didn't because he doesn't love us. Right back to the inconsistent triad. And free will well, not everyone actually believes that it exists. With hard determinism, all of our choices are set in stone. We don't really have the ability to do what we want. And finally, we've got process theodicy. So this was made by Whitehead and developed by Griffin. And basically, it's the idea that Christianity teaches that God made the world ex nihilo. What that means is out of nothing. So there was nothing, and then God created everything. But process theodicy talks about what if he didn't? So what if, instead, he shaped the world from primordial chaos? And the result of this was that it opened up the possibility of both good and evil. And an important factor of this, though, kind of controversial, is that God isn't omnipotent, because he is also the subject to nature. He can't do anything about it. He just has to hope for the best, right? So God has ultimate persuasive power, not coercive power. So even though he's trying, he's encouraging and luring the universe towards greater order. It's, he's still going through the process. He can't just like snap his fingers if he has them and make it all happen at once. It does defend God though, because life is valuable, unless you're doing your A-levels, in which case it's really not. Because say that God's choice to make us is loving, because in the end, we still live our lives despite suffering. There are good moments. And then another kind of controversial thing is that God actually shares our joy and suffering. So he also is not like in all this evil, because he feels it all for all of us. And that might be attractive to some people because it's like a more personal, intimate relationship with God. Now, strengths, logically possible. And the ex nihilo argument comes from interpretations of Genesis 1, and it's supported by scholars of Hebrew, so people who actually know all about Hebrew and what they might have meant when they wrote it. It's also positive because, well, we do value our existence most of the time, unless you're in a 3-hour RS exam. But the weaknesses are that it's not compatible with pretty much all teachings about God. Because if God isn't omnipotent, then that's just a pathetic God that isn't worthy of worship, Second thing is that it's not really that appealing that God suffers with us, because we've already seen that happen with Jesus. Jesus died on the cross and felt the pain for all the sins. So we don't really need a more personal thing with God. And pessimism is the universe even going to live long enough to complete the process to become perfect? Probably not, to be honest. So, that is that. Thank you for listening.